Hi everyone!
Hi,
We finished our book, our first book, and we want to talk about it today. How are you, Sarah?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good. So, did you like that book?
Yeah, I really enjoy the Prism of Lyra. Um, I think we're gonna talk more about it, so I shouldn't ramble on, but I really, really liked it. And what about yourself?
Yeah, it was not the first time that I read it, it was the second time, and it was great. It was really great, and I actually think I'm gonna read it once a year. It's short, it's great, and it's a good reminder, I guess.
Yeah.
But let's dive deeper into it. Let's see what
Yes.
happens.
Okay, I wanted to know how you found the book and were there any codes within the book that were unlocked within you if you want to share?
Oh, yes. So, the first time around when I read this concept of free will and integration, it really did something that really helped me because we often think of the world in the realm of duality, something against one another, and I usually understood that as a spectrum. So, for me, the spectrum was like that line, and it was a tipping point between the negative and the positive, and you're trying to find that thin line between each other, and it doesn't really give you um, much space for you to move or to make a mistake. It was difficult. It was a tightrope. And when they start to integrate the idea of the Syrian pyramid, where there's the integrative point and the negative and the positive, and you basically have this beautiful triangle like a pyramid, I started to see a way between those two where you start to integrate all the different levels between the positive and the negative, which is not being judged in any way, and you reach that neutrality between those two. So there's not a judgment for positivity, which could be judged also, and negativity. And it was very interesting for me to see that pyramid. So I want to quote it. So, in order to create, polarities must always be joined or integrated. And then there's that. I'm gonna put like the illustration. There's that pyramid, and for me it made so much sense. I don't know, it just like blew a big bang in my head where I was like, oh my god, yes, I have. Oh my god, yes, I have to see like all the different points and dive deeper into all the levels and reach that point where I contain it all. Like all of that is within me is not contained as in constricted, but like as in embodied, integrated, put within my consciousness. And it really helped me. And at the very end of the book, the author Lisa Royal Holt shares, how on earth do we encourage integration to take place? First of all, we must know that it will take place with or without our conscious action. The difference is only that conscious action will allow the journey to be more enjoyable. We will feel more in control of our destinies. And so that's the beginning of individual integration, and then at the end of the book there's the collective integration where we are finally able to see all of the facets of life without judgment, without shame, without pushing them away, and just integrating them in a way so that we can recognize the beauty within all of it, and also be able to heal the more difficult parts of us by being conscious of them, by being actively integrating them. We can do things and develop that energy. So that's something that really helped me when I read it and when I reread it. What about you? How did you find the book, and what were the codes that changed within you when you read it? If you want to share.
This was my first time reading this book and I really enjoyed it. It's been on my list for a while. But what I really liked about this book is that it brought galactic history in a more it's like it's like a higher explanation of galactic history while also bringing it more down to earth in a way that um it's not very fluffy. It's not like, oh, we're all ascending and we're all becoming fifth dimensional, but it outlines how these planets that we look to and these galactic civilizations that we look to, how they themselves evolved and how evolution doesn't look like one thing. Evolution doesn't mean that everybody is moving up towards 5D and, you know, becoming love and light. Like that can be one thing, but it also shows like how other civilizations like the Zeta Rectuli, how they evolved. And what was really interesting was for me that civilization, when they evolved to a unity consciousness civilization, it actually didn't appear to be the way that we think it would be, right? So that was very interesting for me because it showed me that as we become more tuned into the idea of unity consciousness, which is important, at the same time, like individuality and thinking for yourself is very important. This book I read during a time where there was some political unrest in Canada. So it was very interesting for me to read what was happening in this book and what I was seeing in my own reality. And the part where you mentioned about the pyramid and be able to integrate the light and the dark and, you know, like the negative and the positive, that was a very good reminder for me, because in my reality, what was happening, what I was seeing in myself, what I was seeing on the news, it was really just, I saw how in order to get to the middle of the fulcrum, or like the higher point of the fulcrum, we have to admit to ourselves and see in ourselves that there is the positive, but there is also the negative, and we have to take ownership for the negatives within ourselves. So I really, really resonated with that part. If you read the Sophia Code, right? She also brought up something like that, where I wish I had it, but like she also explains why it's so important for us to integrate the darkness and the light, and we shouldn't judge either of it. We shouldn't always just be like, oh, the light is better, it's this and that, because it's the darkness where you learn what that the light can truly exist. Because yeah, I don't know, I want to say it that way because it really, really showed me how important it was for us as earthlings and as humans to start to take control of our actions, our realities, and take responsibility for what we're doing. Because it seems to me, when I go online and read about galactic history, that it always sounds to me, and this is my filter that I read it through, that we're always waiting to be saved, that we're always waiting for an external source to save us. And it's like the ones who can save us are us. The external sources can provide help and guidance and advice, and we can learn from them and see the possibilities. Like we can see what it means to come from a 5D point of view, or we can see what it means to, you know, come from a unity consciousness and stuff like that. That's important. And it's important to see that there's different, like there's no one truth, right? Like there's so many ways it can take shape. But this book was also showing me that we can see those perspectives, and to us we think it's, you know, ideal, but there might also be some negatives, again in quotation marks, negatives to that. So we as humans have to decide what we want, and what we want for our earth, our planet, because the earth itself is galactic. The earth itself is like magic. It's not a crappy place to be. It's not like we're going to ascend and leave the earth. No, we're gonna ascend and be with the earth. So we gotta start becoming friends with the earth, right? And the earth should be the number one priority over any, okay, this is my opinion, but I think the earth should be the number one priority over any like moving to Andromeda or something. Like I think there's a reason why we're here on earth, and we should start to acknowledge that. Yeah,
Definitely. And like she does say, like Earth is entering adulthood. Like we've all been like rampant teenagers with our thinking, with the religions, like with everything, and now it's like no, like adult, you are responsible. Saturn return, like you got to take ownership of whatever is happening. And I want to read that last quote, like there are no space brothers who are really going to save us. They are too busy saving themselves. Like they also have things to do.
yeah,
So we gotta take care of ourselves. Like they have that contract of like non-interaction, um, non-action. Like it's not gonna happen. Yes, like we have to take that responsibility. And I love that. Like the fact that it's not evading Earth to go somewhere else, as you mentioned. Like so many books are just like, oh my God, we miss our home, away from home, like ooh la la, li la la. And it's like, but we chose. Like there's so much an accent on free will in that book. There's so much like the code to everything is free will.
Yeah.
So we chose to be here. Like it has been free will in the past too. So you chose to be here. Obviously, there were like there's like mentions of stories of like escaping and being locked in Earth so that we could escape Orion. Like there's a whole story there that we don't need to go deeper into. But so that might look like it's not free will, but I do guess that we still have free will and we had free will all the time. Okay. Okay.
Are there some paragraphs or like quotes or anything from the book that resonate with you? One of them that I really liked was called, it was in chapter 4, the Sirius factor, where basically it talks about the two polarities of Sirius, where there was a positive polarity and a negative polarity. And what I found so interesting was the positive polarities began bombarding the negative polarity beings with love and healing energy on the subconscious and unconscious levels. Because the negatives were so tightly focused, this created psychological pain for them. And I really like, I can't explain how important this quote was for me, because I think it really shows that, we talk about how how do I want to say? It's like we talk about how you don't send people energy healing without their consent, or like how praying for someone can be a questionable concept. And that really, really resonated with me because, again, when I was reading this book, I saw a lot of things in my reality here in Canada where people would be like, oh, um your heart is so closed and I'm gonna pray for you. And I was just watching, and this was on the news, so I was just watching and I was thinking, like, how do you know that this person's heart is closed? How do you know that they need praying? Just because they're not showing you what they're the full spectrum of them, it doesn't mean that that they're in need of saving, right? And again, it's like we can think that we're aligned with a higher frequency and a higher dimension. And I see this a lot being shown on spiritual Twitter, on like all these spaces where we think that everything needs to be positive, but we also have to honor the healing process of another person. We have to like allow them to be themselves and realize whether they want to keep this or they don't want to keep this. And when I read about this positiveness, trying to pray for these other people, well, not pray, like bombarding the negatives with love and healing energy, to me, I think that's actually part of a dominance timeline, because you're thinking that you know better than another person, another being. And it's really not about leaning too much into one, but again, like the pyramid is coming back into neutral. So that was a very interesting paragraph for me to like read and stuff. But yeah.
I love that. I love that you share that in that way as well, because when people do such a thing, they're removing your free will as well by
Yeah.
choosing for you. And that's a rhetoric that I see a lot within like Christian groups. And I've been told so many times, like, I will pray for you. And I'm like, please do not. Do not pray for me. What are your prayers going to be? What is it? It's not going to be my free will, right? So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing that aspect of dominance while using words that could be, you know, thought of as positive, because it's not, like it's not kind, it's not positive to, it's actually very violent to be like, your heart is closed. Who says? And
I
I'm
know,
gonna pray
right?
for you. Like, what is wrong with you? So
Yeah.
I think that obviously there's like an aspect of like that responsibility and that free will that we have to embody and integrate and recognize the responsibility, the free will, the choice, and the integration of others. And that's so important to be like, okay, yes, me, I've got all of this, and that's powerful, and that's also a lot of work, but I also have to recognize that everyone else is like this, and we have to stop thinking I'm a victim or others are a victim and there are, subject to destiny and fate in a way. So I wanted to share then two little quotes that respond to that as well. So one is like the frequency of responsibility, and then the author develops. This is the frequency when one begins to remember the encoding of free will. This is the last frequency where physical bodies are the vehicles of the expression for consciousness. Are the vehicles for the expression of consciousness. So I love that because, again, like she lifts us up in a way where the body is also as important as the consciousness, whereas when we think of different religions, or even the whole rhetoric of oh, I'm incarnated here, this is not my home, oh my god, this body is so unintelligent and I'm like a victim to this. No, like the body has so much wisdom, there's so much beauty in there, and like no, we have to recognize that the body is a vehicle, it's a process, it's a treasure chest of wisdom. So I wanted to share that. And also when I mentioned like Earth is entering adulthood, which is also like we're asking those people to become adults and we're asking ourselves to become adults. The whole quote is Earth is entering adulthood and has been kicked out of the nest. It would serve humanity to release its victimhood, claim its divine birthright, and create heaven on earth. So again, we can talk about earth and like how nature is filled with codes and filled with wisdom and with like the process for our evolution and ascension, if we must use that word. But yeah, that's parts of the book that resonated with me.
That's beautiful. I really liked it. I really like the part about the body being the vehicle. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, we're here for a reason, and those other civilizations that exist within this galaxy and others, they're not all incarnated in a body. So you could see that when you read the Prism of Lyra, where you see that some of them are a group consciousness and they're not in a body, or some others are in a body but they can't create other beings. They can't, they are not fertile anymore. So there's a whole of different stories, and you can see that the body is truly, it's an asset. I want to say, like, I don't want to say asset as in like looking at it within like a capitalistic vocabulary, but it truly is. As I said, like a treasure chest. It's a chance for us to have a body, so we should, embody it, love it, and cherish it, and also listen to it.
Yeah.
Can I ask you the next question?
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some relevant themes in this book that show up in present time? You mentioned, for example, the situation in Canada, and yeah, this can be if you want to share about your personal life or about the collective, what we see in present day.
Ooh, there were a lot of themes that came up for me in this book, and I think there's so many. I'm gonna try and see if I can like narrow it down. I think the first one was like really obvious, was because there was stuff going on in Canada, so it was really easy for me to see it as a reflection of what was happening. And it was a very good book because it reminded me that like there's no right side and there's no wrong side, because eventually whatever we see, and I think it's very hard for a person to just be like completely in the center. So it's a very good reminder for one person, anybody really, that you might be here and you might not be able to see the other side, or you might think that this whole side is the relevant side, but it's very important to, even though you don't agree with what is here, it's still very important for yourself to ask those questions. Like we were talking about being responsible, it's very important for yourself to ask those questions. And again, it's like, it's not that you have to agree with them, because again, individuality is very, very important. But I think in the case of like, as we start to move towards the middle, the upper fulcrum, we have to we really have to start thinking about those things. And I think that was like really drilled into me and as I was reading this book. And we also have to start taking responsibility for being earthlings, I guess, maybe that's the word, because it really shows how the earth is a miracle and what the earth was. And when I was reading this book, I read a lot of books at once. I was like, it was like parallel to like what I was seeing in Atlantis. And it really is like the earth was basically going through what all these other civilizations in this book was going through. It's like it started out this way, and they learned that maybe this way wasn't like the best way, so then it started another way. And what earth is doing now is like it's learned so much that we have a chance now to make the decisions that we already hold within us. Like we know what might have happened in the past, and now we're able to make the decisions as earthlings, and I want to say as stewards of the earth. We can make better choices for the earth. And it's not like we as in we're separate from the earth, but it's almost like the earth is us. And it's like it's not that we're thinking for the earth, but it's like we're working with the earth and thinking together with the earth. So it's like the earth consciousness is our consciousness, if that makes sense. And I really, really like that because it reminded me like how special the earth is. And it really highlighted earth guardianship, right? Like I was reading these books and I was thinking like, is there another daisy on like the flower, the daisy is it only on earth, or can I find it on like Sirius? Is that, you know what I mean? Then you start to just think like, oh my gosh, it's like there's only one daisy, like one species of, how do I say it, like one flower, one type of daisy. No, not one type. There, like a daisy exists in the earth. How do I say?
Like a species, no? Like a subspecies,
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah, maybe subspecies. So there's only on earth you can find a daisy, or like only on earth you can see a dog in this shape and form. So you start to just see like how the earth is like a library basically. And I really liked it. I really resonated with it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I wanna emphasize I want to emphasize with my own answer to this question because I've
Go
been
ahead.
playing with my lamp and I'm sure everyone is just like, okay, why the fuck is there a lamp here? But it kind of reminds me of the Prism of Lyra, where we're basically talking about a prism, right? We're shedding light on something and it reflects all of those lights, all of the colors of the rainbow. So again, we're integrating all of the facets of truth and all of the codes that are within the earth. And again, like you just mentioned, the daisies, like all of the flowers, the species, the plants, the animals, the dogs, we're all one being, which is the earth. And we have all those codes, all of those colors, and we need it. So when we talk of one thing, but there's a multitude within it, I love that. So yes, I've been playing with that light to emphasize this, but they talk about, that white hole as comparing to a black hole, and then it's just shedding, and it's like that big bang that separates from that one hole. I'm repeating myself, but like that one
Okay.
thing, the all, all, that's separated into all of the parts that we are now. That's why we can say I am God, because that one God that was separated into many, many things, we're reuniting into that unity consciousness, into that earth, into that one thing, where there's also going to be like the collective and the individual. It's obvious that we need both, but that was interesting for me to see, and just listening to your words, it made me think about that again. So I wanted to share that. Like I love connecting like the science of it when I was like considering black holes, and how they mentioned that the Prism of Lyra is a white hole, and I was like, oh my god, like a black hole sucks and like magnetizes and like takes everything to itself, and then the Prism of Lyra is the beginning. It's the one whole god that is fragmenting itself more and more into all of those colors being parts, and I was interested in that, so I wanted to share that. And that story of evolution, it's the most beautiful story, no matter how we mess up and all the ways that we try to find. I think it's beautiful. We are interacting with the earth, and she's growing as much as we are, like she's evolving as well, right? That's why there's so many things with climate change. Like she is changing because of our interaction and our pollution and the industries that are creating horrible things for her, but she's also responding to that. So she is going through her own evolution. I don't want to say ascension, like evolution. So I'm curious to see where it goes, where it takes us. But that's where I considered like the destruction of some planets in that book. Those themes were difficult, and I was like, I hope that we become responsible and we don't do such a thing to our own planet, because when we said the body, the physical body is a beautiful vessel and it's a treasure chest, like the earth is also physical and it's a treasure chest of many things. So again, between the matter and the just consciousness that is abstract. And yes, I'm done. I'm done with my answer.
That's a good answer. Oh, do you feel inspired by this book, and how did that inspiration translate for you?
I did feel inspired by this book because the way that the civilizations are being presented is both recalling some of my past lives. So, for example, when Syrians and Arcturus is being shared, I was very connected to those points. And there is a point where in my previous video, I was sharing myself reading the Prism of Lyra, and there is a point where I stopped reading because I couldn't take it anymore. I felt my body was like constricted with the memories of Orion and the wars there that I was in it. So I stopped myself from reading. I took myself out, and then I was like, I don't want to open this book again. I don't want to continue. It's too difficult because my body was frozen. And then I just pushed myself through it, and I was like, no, we're gonna continue because we're gonna remind ourselves that it's finished. And I love that because it was kind of a pep talk to be like, okay, like remember it's finished. So maybe in this lifetime when we're having difficult episodes, we could actually just kind of write a storyline and remember ourselves that we find a solution in whichever way, and that could be an inspiration or like a healing modality, like writing your own automatic writing your own healing. So that's that. What about you? Did you feel inspired by this book, and what does it look like now?
I did feel very inspired by this book. I think, like I mentioned it so many times, but I think the book really reminded me about how important it is that we are humans who chose to be on this earth, who can do something for this earth. So I think the inspiration didn't translate into like one thing, but I think it's just now like in my mind that when I make decisions for myself, I want to make decisions that are for the earth if possible too. So I guess maybe like working together with the earth. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, yeah, I really want to do more for the earth now, and I really want to like invite that stewardship piece, I guess, for the earth into my life. So yeah, I don't know, the hummingbirds are more vibrant, the squirrels are more cute. So yeah, that really did something for me.
I love that.
Yeah,
And does this book remind you of anything?
it actually, I feel like it, how do I want to say it? It's like I didn't really feel like I was in the past, like I had past lives related to it, or it's like I didn't really remember it as I was reading the book, but it's like I knew what they were talking about, if that makes sense. So it wasn't personal, but it was kind of like, you're reading, it's like you're hearing the stories of like your grandma talking about what happened during her time. That's kind of how it felt for me. So that was really more of what I got from it. But it was a very good exploration of human consciousness and where it's headed, or where we can head to. That was really there for me.
I love that. We're gonna save this planet, right? We
We
are.
are. Um, this is a like tangent point, but there's another book that I was reading where this person asks the Earth, like, how are we going to save this planet? And the Earth responds. So she channels. Her name is Pepper Lewis. And the Earth says, reframe that question from a state that shows that you are empowered and that I am empowered and that we already have saved the Earth or something like that. I should see if I can send you that quote. But I was reading it and I was like, oh, like again, we're not. It's like, the free will piece. It's like we're not like, it's like, how do I want to say it? It's like we can already be empowered and we can already make that decision, and it's not like we're waiting to be saved. You know what I mean? So that was like, yeah.
I remember you shared it on Twitter, I guess, or on Instagram, but I remember seeing it and being like, oh my God, yes, like when we ask questions from a state of victimhood, the answer is going to be impacted by that. But when we
Yeah.
choose the frequency that we're in, when we ask the question, and that frequency is responsibility, empowerment, or like, I'm going to deal with it, like, I'm dealing with it, then the answer is going to be much more clear and adapted to the frequency that you're sharing. Thank you for
Yeah.
reminding me of that, because it really, when you share that, it really helps my Akashic record session. Now I'm like I was careful of that, but not always. Sometimes it's good to be like, I'm a victim, help me, like, and then the records are like, okay, let's go. And it feels good sometimes to be nurtured in a way and to complain. There's a beauty in complaining, I guess, or at least it's a guilty pleasure. It feels great, but obviously it's not really helping, is it? So it's better to be responsible, or even better is a judgment, but let's try being responsible for a while.
Yeah.
Do you have possible critics of the book, like parts where you were not, um, you don't agree with the author?
I wouldn't say I didn't agree with it. It's more like every time you read something, you got to use discernment. So I feel like from this book, I took what I needed from it, and whatever didn't resonate, it didn't. Um, I think in terms of critiques, I don't really have much. I really appreciated that this book was written in a way that is like, this is what she says. She doesn't say this really happened or something. It's like, as you were saying, like, you can believe it. You don't have to believe it. It's okay. I really like that part. Um, I actually really appreciated the Galactic Heritage cards now more that I've read this book, because yeah, those are a really good set of cards. But this book really just helped me understand the cards better. Oh, okay. I guess a critique. Why was there nothing on Andromeda in it? No, I'm joking, but like, yeah, that's the only thing. But yeah, I really, really, really like this book. I don't know. It's a really good book. I wish I had it in print now. What about you?
I love the fact that you mentioned Andromeda, because in the booklet of her Galactic Heritage deck that we mentioned last time and that you just mentioned, so she wrote the book and she talks a little bit about the founders of this whole thingy, like the kind of like the founding members of the family of Pleiadians, Arcturians, and everyone. And she just mentions the Andromeda being like the first architects of all of it, so that's why they're like a little bit on the side, like they're from such a long past, if we understand time, that we don't mention them, and that's why they're not here, I guess, because they're not also in our galaxy, like
Yeah.
other galaxy, right? So galactic heritage. But yeah, I also wanted to know more about Andromeda. I was like, come on, guys, where are we? But yeah, I guess that's also something that we have to kind of be like, okay, well, I'm here on Earth, right?
Yeah.
So focusing on that. But yeah, possible critics. I actually really enjoy this book compared to a lot of channel books within the same realm. I've read a lot of them, and this one is the most objective, let's say. Like, it doesn't really take any sides. It's just present things being like, and again, this is viewed through my filter, the person who channels things is obviously always going to filter something through. So I really loved the fact that it was quite obvious, and then you again pick what you want, and then you don't have to be, it's not the Bible where they're like, and God created the world in 7 days. End of the question. Like, but it's not logical. God created it in 7 days, and you're like, but it's not a dogma. It's a story. You could see it as a story, and then you go through the motions, and it's interesting. And if it calls something back in your DNA, then you address it, or you find the people that can help you address it, and that's it. I love that. So I don't really have critics. I have critics on the genre, but I don't have critics on that book, I guess, because I don't take it very like as seriously as I would with, for example, the Bible, which would make me outraged at every page. But yes.
So when I was reading this book, and a while ago when I was reading, like just looking up on galactic history and starting to get into it, I think one thing that felt really iffy for me was that it was mirroring a lot of dominance in the earth. And what I mean by that is, when you read this book and when you read a lot of galactic history, it almost sounds like it's like there's a preferred, how do I want to say it? It's like there's like a theme of like colonization in galactic history, and a theme of dominance, and a theme of like, even not in this book, but when you read about like the earth being colonized and stuff like that, there's a theme of that. And I really thought that with this book, it really, really taught me that this dominance and this war energy, it's still being played out on Earth. And it was so interesting for me to see that it was also played out in the galaxy. And it really makes me think again about, like, if we're choosing to evolve with the Earth, what are we going to do with this energy signature or this energy frequency? And it's like, for me now, I don't want to carry it anymore. I don't want to be a part of it anymore. And again, it doesn't mean like I don't want it and I'm going to ignore it. No, it's actually like I don't want it, and I'm going to have to work within myself to actively like take it out of my mind, which also again, like, it means that I have to be responsible for all these like codes that are within me. And I see it play out. There's like so many different like avenues, I guess that's the word that it comes out in. So like you can see it in like racism and white supremacy, you can see it in classism, you can see it even in sometimes like when I notice, like, if I'm talking to my partner and he is going to do something that I personally don't agree with, but I know I'm going to be affected with, so I'm trying to like sneakily like do the whole you can't really do this because if that makes sense, like there's a dominance energy behind it. And I really have to be like, okay, it's okay, he can do whatever he wants, I respect his free will. So stuff like that. There's a lot of that kind of themes in galactic history, and I think this book really confirmed it for me. If you read into it deeper, like, you start to see how they were talking about the nets, and I'll let you read it for yourself. But when they talked about the nets, that was like when I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what's on Earth, like the nets. And like, that's how it's possible that you can just keep staying trapped in the cycle if you choose to willingly ignore it. So that part was really important for me, I guess. I hope I'm saying I hope I'm making sense. If I'm not, if I'm rambling, just cut this part out.
No, you're totally right. And I think that yes, we can always like read much deeper into this, or even explore this theme much deeper, and we could take hours to talk about that. I want to mention, like, she, like, in like ascension terms, but like she does mention like one civilization that is, you know, like that has domination as its core theme, and that wasn't able to do anything. It was trapped because it was a philosophy of domination, and so she says, which was becoming more difficult to maintain in fourth density. So she's kind of showing us that if we carry on doing that, we're going to be stuck as well. Like, because this is how it is. It just does not work. If you dominate, you can't go past a certain point. So again, free will, free will, free will. But yes, she does mention something that is not channeled, but she does say, like, about the history of this earth, as you mentioned, like, we were dominated by different civilizations that came and kind of played with our genetics and then tried a few things, and were trying to excavate all the resources of the earth. So she says, in exploring the ancient Sumerian texts concerning early history and the nature of the conflicts of the gods, which, you know, we understand that the gods are extraterrestrial beings that were incarnated and that might have, you know, looked much bigger than the regular size of a humanoid from Earth. And so she says, the conflicts of the gods, one gets a clear idea that Earth, in whole or in part, was involved with issues of territorial disputes by various groups at different times. So we have this trauma. We do have this trauma of having been the victim of those bigger beings, of those gods. We've been victims, and we can find this in religions. So it's interesting to see how, you know, when there's a victim, there's a perpetrator, and when we try to work out this theme or this trauma, we also become the perpetrators, and that's what we've been doing to each other since the beginning of time, right? Whether it's a man-woman thing or whether it's any type of nationality, continents against each other, just the whole race and white supremacy that we see still coming out in this day and age. So that's why we have to take ourselves totally out of victimhood, so that we can take ourselves out of dominance, and that we can finally see each other eye to eye and, you know, be equals to one another, because we are equals. So yeah, I hope that humanity on Earth has it within itself to continue to open up all those difficult subjects, and that we can find solutions. And yeah, I can see it happen. I hope it will happen, and I'll be responsible for it happening around me.
That was very beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you too. So we have a last quote that, do you want to read it or can I read it?
You can read it.
Yay. So I wanted to share that last quote before we decide another book for the book club. So this is the last paragraph from the book, and it's not called. And the author shares, Earth of the present and Earth of the future is indeed a miracle. Let us celebrate that miracle by integrating ourselves and taking responsibility for our planetary reality. We are part of an association of worlds, and our membership is up for renewal. This time, membership requires our awakening to the cosmic drama of which we've agreed to be a part. Our awakening will lead us home to ourselves. End. Yeah, it's good. It's the end, you know, like we're not alone. We belong to something. We belong to a galaxy. And, you know, we have to do things in order to keep being a part of it, and like just a lively planet, I guess, like just a planet that is alive.
So for our next book, we wanted a theme where people can be, you know, like happier, I guess that's the word, because it's really important, I think, in these times too. So our next book is, do you want to introduce the next book?
Yes, it's Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Mayer Rilke, and yeah, it has nothing to do with galactic heritage. This is a series of letters. They're nonfiction, and it's between a man and an author that was published, a poet that was famous, and he's a young poet who also wants to make a career out of his words and his expression, and the exchange is so beautiful. It's so helpful in a time of, you know, of doubt and questions, and I just think this book it's beautiful because it lifts up different realities and different wisdoms that are very, very healing, and they help refocus where we can look to in order to find our, I don't want to say satisfaction, but like our own happiness. And that is not always easy, and it's something very universal. So even if the book is old, it's very helpful to consider that and to let ourselves be nurtured by Rilke.
So that is our book for this next couple of weeks, and we will see you end of April.
Yay! It's very accessible. You will find it. There's a beautiful collection by Penguin that is very cheap, so you can get the book and have fun with it and let it become a friend, because that book is really a friend. It's such a help. See you soon. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being my book club partner.
Thank you for being my book club partner. It's really fun when I'm reading a book with another person. I guess it just feels really good because I can just, I don't know, it just feels good to be like reading with other people. And I know that other people also express interest in reading the Prism of Lyra with us. And even though like we're moving on to another book right now, I'm still like a nosy person. I still want to hear if you have any thoughts or anything. So if you do, please either comment or find us question on socials. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be on socials for long either, but you'll find us, I guess, somehow. And yeah, I really hope that you have super fun reading Letters to a Young Poet. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. And let us know as you read it. Like, we are buddy reading it. We're reading it together. So come at us and share what is your favorite part or your questions or what resonated. Like, interact with us. We want the interaction. We want to be reading all together. Welcome to the family. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Okay. I also really want to clarify on one thing where I was like talking about, which is agreeing with, I was talking about how you have to agree with, not agree, sorry. It was like you have to see the other side and what they're, what it is. And it's not like you have to agree with it, but it's like coming into the middle of the fulcrum. And what that means for me is it's not words that really, how do I want to say it? It's like we fight about a lot of things on earth, honestly. We fight about like money and oil and stuff like that. And that, like, it's really important, right? Like getting rid of capitalism and ensuring that everybody lives in a world that is equal and like fair for them. But when I say take responsibility, again, it's like we have to think about the energy behind our actions. And I see that mirrored a lot in me. And it's like, even though I don't outrightly say something that is, like super controversial or whatever, I still do things. Like there are energy signatures in me that I do that still uphold like a dominance energy timeline type of thing. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, to be in the middle, you have to look at the energy, because in this world there's like a lot of words, a lot of confusion, a lot of information, where if you don't really know where you're at, you are gonna be used. And it's very important. That's why you have to like own that side of you that you are like, oh, I'm not like that. Yeah, and maybe you're not like that in that package, but where am I? Like, okay, I'm saying you and I'm like alternating, but it's like, I might not be like that in that package, but how do I have energy frequencies and energies within me that are similar to that package and are basically the same energy of that package? I think that's what I'm trying to get at. If there's confusion, like leave a comment. I'm happy to explain, but I think that's really important in this whole dominance timeline things. Okay.
We talk of people that have a high audience online as influencers. And that's really that. And people have influence. So we are being influenced by what we see. And when we see it repeatedly, we start to incorporate it into the normalcy or what is the mainstream, right? But are you being influenced by the words, or is the energy influencing you? And we have to understand things energetically in order to see if someone is even just outside of their own authority and integration, right? And their own, like, okay, I own up to whatever is happening to me. So thank you so much for sharing that, because we are being hypnotized, and the more you can choose what you hypnotize yourself with by, you know, manifesting, creating your own reality, and like reinforcing through different routines and your own value system that helps you to deal in life where you're authentic, integrated, and able to see the whole realm. We have to understand that there is an influence and that we don't always see it. So it's important to kind of debunk that. And even with that book, right? That book could be, we don't really know where to classify that book. And for me, when I read it, the energy of it feels good. So, I mean, most of the energy of it feels like something that I resonate with. So I'm going to incorporate it until one day I might not want to incorporate it anymore. But there's a lot of other books that might share things and that might have, you know, the flowers and the glitter and the Pleiadians, love and light. But what is really the influence of it? And what are they saying? Sometimes people just hide themselves and use a powerful rhetoric, and by consuming much of those books, or, you know, we're talking about interviews or vaccines or anything else, when it's repeated, the influence starts to anchor itself within you, and then you start repeating the same thing. So definitely, yeah, debunking all of that, right?
Definitely.